Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for.
First off, again, I want to apologize about the voice. When your team wins a natty on Monday, sometimes by Thursday, you're not in very good shape. But I do want to try and get through this segment. And part of the reason I wanted to even do a show today, there has been so much that has happened in the transfer portal over the last couple of days. I didn't think we could wait another 2, 3, 4 days until Monday to talk portal. So what I want to do now, it's been about a week since we did one of these transfer portal news and notes segments. I just want to hit on everything that's going on in the portal right now. We'll talk about 4 or 5 players that have entered the portal since the last time I did one of these updates. There's some interesting movement on the Hunter Dickinson, Caleb Love front. We'll discuss that. And then we'll discuss some commitments. Kirk Risa has a new home. Arkansas picked up a commitment. So try to bear with the voice. Again, I apologize, but I couldn't wait until Monday to talk portal. So let's get into it. In terms of the new players in the portal over the last couple of days, to me, the single most fascinating one came Thursday when Ryan Nembhard, the starting point guard for Creighton, decided to enter the transfer portal. Put simply, this is a really good college basketball player. 6-foot point guard, led Creighton in minutes this year, has been the starting point guard since the day he stepped on campus, averaged 13 points, 4 rebounds, just under 5 assists per game this season. Was an integral part of Creighton's Elite 8 team, starter, good shooter, really everything you want in a modern college point guard. I'd add, that's also why it's so surprising that he's in the portal. Led Creighton in minutes. The team won. Ball is in his hands. I don't really know what he wants outside of what he was already getting at Creighton, but this is the world that we live in. I talked to a couple people throughout the day on Thursday, and I'm using talk loosely because I wasn't really talking. But what I would say is my understanding from the family's perspective is they're starting to wonder, are other guys overshadowing him? Why is he not on NBA draft boards? Why was he not an all Big East guard this year? Is there something else out there? Now, I would argue he's not an NBA draft boards. I don't know if he's an NBA player, about 5'11", 6 feet, but that doesn't mean that he's not a very good college basketball player. And so I don't necessarily agree with the decision to leave, but it doesn't change the fact that he is one of the best players in the portal. I just updated my rankings of the top players in the portal. He is number 2 behind Hunter Dickinson. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in his recruitment. Now, I was tipped off that it appears as though Arizona is a heavy favorite in his recruitment. Remember, Ryan Nembhard is the younger brother of Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard transferred from Florida to Gonzaga. Actually, very similar circumstances. Andrew Nembhard led Florida in minutes played when he transferred. But Gonzaga turned Andrew Nembhard into an NBA player. Well, who was Andrew Nembhard's lead recruiter when he was at Gonzaga? When he was recruited to Gonzaga? It was current Arizona head coach Tommy Lloyd. So there's a relationship between player and coach, family and coach. And it is worth noting, the Gonzaga system elevated Andrew Nembhard into an NBA player. I think the family hopes that they can do the same for Ryan Nembhard. It remains to be seen, but I suspect that Ryan Nembhard will ultimately commit to Arizona, but just a shocking piece of transfer news. Speaking of shocking, I'll tell you this. I was on the way to the national championship game on Monday night, NRG Stadium in Houston, when the news broke that LJ Cryer from Baylor has also entered the transfer portal. This one's already about 72 hours old by the time I'm recording it. We just haven't had a chance to talk portal stuff. But LJ Cryer is a great college basketball player. 6'1". He's really more of a shooting guard than a point guard. But he was Baylor's second leading scorer. And remember, Baylor was a really good college basketball team this year. Top 10 for most of the season, ended up as a 3 seed. Ironically, they lost to Creighton in the round of 32. Who knew that was they should call it the round of unhappiness, because Ryan Nembhard's gone. Now LJ Cryer's gone. A great college basketball player, 15 points per game, about a 43% three-point shooter. And if you're just looking for a dude that can get you buckets, that has proven that he can get you buckets at the high major level, LJ Cryer is your guy. Now, what's interesting with him is sort of what's interesting with the Ryan Nembhard stuff. The reason that I've been told that he's leaving is I do think he kind of wants to prove at 6'1", I can be a point guard, I can lead an offense. Just one problem, I don't think that's what he's good at, right? Like I could do a lot of things, but I'm good at talking about sports when I actually have a voice. And so I think that's going to be the interesting part of his recruitment. When he's meeting with teams, is it about being recruited to play a point? Like, is he only going somewhere because he wants to prove he can be a point guard? Because it takes away from his best skill, which is scoring. And I don't know if I want him as my point guard. I want him as my two guard. I think every school in America should be recruiting him as a two guard. But as the lead guard, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to watch unfold. Two teams continue to kind of surface as teams that make most sense for him, this being LJ Cryer, the transfer from Baylor, who averaged 15 points per game, 43% three-point shooting. The two schools that make the most sense, one is obviously Kansas State. Remember, Kansas State head coach Jerome Tang came from Baylor, was the lead recruiter at Baylor forever. And so that is the one that probably makes the most sense to me. LJ Cryer also from Houston, and Houston, to their credit, have had a lot of success with transfer portal guards. They took in Quentin Grimes from Kansas a few years ago. Houston would not surprise me as well. But to me, my guess is that K-State is the front runner here. By the way, they need a point guard without Marquise Noel. Speaking of Houston, we haven't talked since Tremont Mark, one of Houston's best players, entered the portal last weekend. Now, he's an interesting deal. He got a little, 6'5", he's a great wing defender. Good scorer, 10 points per game this year. Not a great shooter, about 31, 32%. Another guy, just a very good college basketball player. Gets after it, great defensively, all that good stuff. What's interesting about him, I think he just wanted a fresh start somewhere. He got kind of overshadowed this year, Marcus Sasser, Jarris Walker, whatever. But what's interesting about him, he's a two-way player, not a great shooter, but he does so many different things, and he can get you buckets. So Tremont Mark is in the portal. He is actually already down to 4 schools, Kansas State, Texas A&M, Florida, and Arkansas. No idea where is, if he has a lean right now. Now, K-State makes a ton of sense, Big 12 territory. Texas A&M does need a wing defender with Dexter Dennis gone. Arkansas, I think, feels like they're in pretty good shape for him as well. So he'll be a name to monitor. He's also one, it's worth noting, he has entered the NBA draft as well. So it may be a while before he ultimately makes a decision there, but really, really talented player in Tremont Mark. Let's keep it going. Last player that I really want to highlight, then we'll get to some news and notes in terms of visits and all that stuff. But Max Abmas, right? Max Abmas, I think most of you remember that name. But he's a very interesting story. Very loyal kid, by the way. So, we talk about the transfer portal being this one way, no loyalty, no nothing. Max Abmas, remember, 3 years ago now, the 2020-2021 season, he led college basketball in scoring at Oral Roberts, 25 points per game. Oral Roberts goes to the Sweet 16. They end up losing to Arkansas. He could have transferred at that point and gone to the high major level. Comes back for another year. Then comes back for this year as well and ends up being a really good player on an Oral Roberts team that made the NCAA tournament. They did lose in round 1 to Duke, but it's not because of Max Abmas. About 23 points per game, 37% three-point shooter. Now, he is a smaller guard, and it is worth noting. He is one of those guys that's kind of a hybrid. He's a point, but he's also the best scorer. And so it'll be interesting to see who recruits him because, you do have to kind of build your entire system around him. I think it'll be interesting to monitor there. Now, I will say, it does appear, keep in mind, by the way, Oral Roberts head coach Paul Mills took the Wichita State job. I have seen that there is a crystal ball in. I think it's at On3 for Wichita State. I have not heard it, but I do think it makes a ton of sense. You step up a level. AAC is a multi-bid league. You can get in for the NCAA tournament from the AAC as an at-large. Max Abmas gets to play on a higher level, gets to play for a coach he trusts. I don't know how far along that one is, but it does make a ton of sense. Let's get beyond just the players that are in the portal, and let's get to some news and notes in terms of visits and Zooms, because there's some interesting stuff going on. Let's start with our buddy, Hunter Dickinson. Big Dickinson energy. Now, it's interesting with Hunter Dickinson, because on Wednesday, when I got home from the Final Four, I tweeted something. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. By the way, Ugonna Kingsley from Kentucky is now in the transfer portal as well. Another really good player. But when Ugonna Onyeso Kingsley, when he entered the portal, right? I tweeted out something to the effect of like, wow, Kentucky, not really that aggressive in the portal, losing guys to the portal. They are really relying on that freshman class to be good. And I Kentucky, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 this and that. All I'm saying is Kentucky does not appear to me to be very active in the portal. I think they've reached out to maybe 4 or 5 guys. I don't know that you can wait that long if you're Kentucky. And every Kentucky fan, oh, we're waiting for our roster to get figured out. So is everybody. So is everybody. Alabama's already taken a commit. Arkansas has taken a commit. TCU has taken a commit, all while they're trying to figure out their roster. But I bring it up to say, right after I sent out that tweet, right after Big Blue Nation came after me, like I'm Calipari losing in the second round. Right after Big Blue Nation came after me, word did leak out that Hunter Dickinson, the 7-foot All-American center from Michigan, was meeting on a Zoom with Kentucky. Now, Zooms are really informal, doesn't mean he's visiting campus, whatever. I do think it'd be a good fit if the two sides could figure things out. Kentucky obviously lost a 7-footer to the portal. They do have a freshman named Aaron Bradshaw coming in, a 5-star. But Aaron Bradshaw said many times, like, I can play the 4. I want to prove I'm a stretch guy anyway. And I'll say this for Hunter Dickinson. I do think this UConn run over the last couple weeks, like it proved to me, like I know there's this thing about like everything's about guards and spacing and 3-point shooting. That's really important. There is something to be said, though, about just being able to dump the ball down low to a 7-footer to get you an automatic 2. There is something to be said, though, about having a 7-footer patrolling the lane, making life difficult for everybody else. And so I bring it up because I'm like back in on having a big guy. Now, I don't think you can have a stiff 7-footer that can't move and I get any Kentucky fan that's kind of like, we just kind of went through this with Oscar, where he's good, but he gets caught up in ball screens, and then all of a sudden he can't defend at the rim. At least Hunter Dickinson has 5 inches on Oscar Sheep. At least he's a legit 7-footer where he does create problems at the rim for opposing teams and did average close to 2 blocks per game. So we'll see if it goes anywhere. I did a full segment, by the way, on YouTube on Hunter Dickinson in Kentucky. Make sure to check that out. Also worth noting, Hunter Dickinson did have a Zoom with Arkansas. Now Arkansas is an interesting one because right now their roster is so in flux. Jalen Graham, backup forward, did announce he was returning. But outside of that, and Joseph Pinion, I should mention, a shooting guard, did announce he's returning as well. But there's a lot of moving parts. Ricky Council's going pro. Nick Smith is going pro. I believe as I'm recording, Anthony Black still hasn't officially declared yet. Jordan Walsh, is he going to test? Is he not going to test? I'll tell you this, same thing for Arkansas that I just said for Kentucky. If you have a chance to build around Hunter Dickinson for 2022, 2023, 2024, you probably got to do it, right? Like there's just something to be said about having a 7-footer down low that's an automatic bucket, but at the same time can defend the rim, can step out. Hunter Dickinson did shoot 43% from 3 this year, so his game is expanding. But he met with Kentucky. He met with Arkansas. There's increasing Kansas rumors. He's projected to take a visit to Georgetown soon. So we'll see what happens with Hunter Dickinson. And I'll just say this. He's one of these guys. He doesn't have to rush the process. Like if he wants to wait until May 28th to commit somewhere, he can wait till May 28th. There's nothing that's stopping him from doing that. But a couple interesting news and notes on him. And then there's a very interesting note on Caleb Love. Caleb Love, everything was trending towards Missouri. For people who forget, Caleb Love is from Missouri. And I remember talking about this when he first entered the portals. I said, that'd be almost a perfect spot because I think Dennis Gates is going to keep Caleb Love in line. On top of that, it's a perfect system for Caleb Love, up and down, relies on the guards. But he's from Missouri, and that would be the perfect spot. If you're able to elevate that program even further, the NIL money would be through the roof. And it appears as though Caleb Love is down to basically 2 schools, Missouri and Michigan, which is making a run. Now, from the Michigan perspective, I'll just say, like, I get why Juwan Howard's kind of in desperation mode, right? Juwan Howard doesn't have anybody right now. Hunter Dickinson transferred. Juwan Howard's own son went pro, which he should have. He's going to be a first-round pick. Kobe Buffkin, the starting point guard, went pro. They don't have anybody left on that roster. I also just don't know if in a make-or-break year you want to put all your eggs in the Caleb Love basket because he is a little erratic. He does need to be kept in line. He does need to be put on the bench sometimes if he gets too out of control. So it'll be interesting to monitor. But it feels like Caleb Love is down to 2 schools. Could somebody else get involved? Absolutely. But that's the update on Caleb Love. Really quickly, a couple other visit notes, and then we'll get to some commits and get out of here. But from a visit perspective, Indiana did host Kalel Ware, the 6'11", 7-foot former McDonald's All-American, really talented player, insane upside. You just got to get him locked in on the process. He's a guy that, you know, I don't know how to say it delicately. The motor has been an issue in the past. Oregon probably wasn't the right fit for him, but he just visited Indiana. I still think he ends up somewhere in the Southeast. I do think Arkansas, his home state school, has interest. And one of those SEC schools would love to have him. I know Ole Miss is going after him. I think maybe Auburn has reached out. Not in the Southeast, but Gonzaga has reached out as well. So that's going to be an interesting one to follow. Also, Nick Timberlake, I think, is an interesting name to follow as well. He is a guy, 6'4" shooting guard, 17 points per game, 41% three-point shooting, visiting Kansas as I speak, just barely speaking, by the way. Also visiting UConn next week. That's worth noting, a potential Jordan Hawkins replacement in Nick Timberlake. Somebody asked me about UConn the other day. I think really outside of that 2-guard spot where Jordan Hawkins will be going pro, I don't know that there's a lot of priority in the portal for UConn. Finally, let's get out of here on a couple commitments. And first of all, can anyone stop the big pig invasion, baby? Eric Musselman, Arkansas, have struck in the transfer portal. First player that they have gotten out of the portal this offseason, Keon Menafield, a all Pac-12 freshman team guard, just finished his freshman year at Washington, commits to Arkansas. I'll just say I love the fit, and let me explain why. So first off, this was a very in-demand guy. I know Alabama wanted him. There were some other schools. But why it's important, he's just the right player for an Arkansas-type team. He can score. He can get downhill. The one thing, if you watch Arkansas, Eric Musselman puts the ball in the hands of his best players and says, go make plays. Whether that was Anthony Black this year, whether that was J.D. Notae 2 years ago, whether it was Mason Jones, whether it was the Martin twins at Nevada. That's kind of his MO as a head coach. But as long as you compete on the defensive end, he's going to put the ball in the hands of his best playmaker. Well, Menafield is not only a great playmaker with the ball in his hands, he is a high-level defender. A high-level defender, elite defender, goes after it. And I just think he's going to be perfect. And one thing about Arkansas, if you don't compete on the defensive end, you can't play for Eric Musselman. Well, this kid competes. This kid goes after it. And I think offensively, it's the right kind of skill set, the right kind of guard for Eric Musselman. And then finally, I'll wrap. Very interesting commitment on Wednesday. Kerr Kriisa, the former Arizona point guard, about 10 points, 5 assists per game, committed to West Virginia. I'll be honest, I don't really get it. I don't know what to say. Maybe there was an NIL situation that was too good to pass up. I don't know. I thought he was my intel had been all along that he was going to play for Sean Miller at Xavier. Remember, Sean Miller was the player that recruited him to college basketball, basically. Committed to Arizona, played for Sean Miller for a year before Sean Miller was let go. Then he stayed for Tommy Lloyd. But stuff changes. And I did see an interview with Kerr Kriisa where he said, I considered a lot of different things, but I thought I needed a fresh start, new coaching staff, new teammates, all that. Basically insinuating, maybe going back with Sean Miller wasn't the best situation for him. But either way, Kerr Kriisa is going to West Virginia. Don't know what to make of it because, Kerr Kriisa is an emotional player. He'll talk, he'll chirp. That doesn't strike me as like Bob Huggins' wheelhouse right there.